Hello fellow cinephiles, welcome back. Today, with the lead up to the new Final Destination Bloodline, I've decided to revisit the previous films, the previous 5 films. And I just want to sort of break down those, have a little bit of discussion about them before the new one comes out. So the first one came out in 2000, and it's had a really great cast. It was a film I didn't really know a lot about going in. I remember when it first came to the cinema, I knew it was a horror film, but I didn't really know what it was about because at that particular time, we never really had that information. You know, we couldn't see certain trailers, especially where I was living, so I didn't really know what this film was about. And I was really impressed with it. I'd like to try to do something different with the horror genre. I really like the concept, you know, of death's plan, death's design, and cheating death, and all those sort of things that were in the film, and I kind of thought that was interesting. I remember someone telling me when this film came out on DVD and they saw it, and as they were going to return it to the video store, they started to look at things along the way, something going to happen to me. It was like it created this real life fear for people, and I thought that was interesting. What an interesting way for a film to do that. For those who haven't seen it, which I'll be surprised if you haven't, it's really about Alex, played by Devon Sawa, who only has vision on a plane of it blowing up and crashing. Ultimately freaks out, and he's able to get a few people off the plane, and then it happens exactly how he envisioned it. And it's really about the survivors dealing with that, and then slowly the survivors are getting killed off one by one, and it's up to Alex and Clear Rivers to sort of work out what's going on. With the aid of Tony Todd's character, the coroner, they sort of start to try and piece this together and realise that there's design to it, that even though they survive this sort of thing from happening, death's coming for them one by one and trying to set things right in a lot of ways, and it's about how they navigate that. Like I mentioned, had a great cast. Devon Sawa, Ailey Larder was the first time I really saw her and became a lifelong fan of hers, and I thought she was really great, and this is Clear Rivers. You know, it had a very young cast. It had Kerr Smith from Dawson's Creek. He was trying to break out of that Dawson's Creek role as Jack, and only in this he plays sort of this jock sort of douchebag in a lot of ways, and he's one of the early characters that is not allowing death to be in control. He wants to be in control. He wants to choose the way he dies. And I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect to him, and good to see Kerr trying to do something different. And had an early appearance by Sean William Scott as well, who's really fun in the film, kind of sort of playing the Dickie sort of character, the sort of dopey, sort of stonerish character. Amanda Dietmar, who had been in quite a few sort of things that I've seen her through, but this is sort of more of the memorable roles she had. And like I mentioned, Tony Todd. Tony Todd's great in it. He's only in like pretty much one scene, but he's so great in the film, in that particular scene. He's creepy and intimidating, and it's kind of like he gives Alex and Clear information about what's going on so they can do what they have to do. But I liked his introduction, and I like him throughout the other films as well. He has a real presence in the film, even if it is only small and minor. I think it's filled with very interesting, like not only the performances, but the characters are very interesting as well and different. And like I mentioned, it's trying to do something a bit different with horror and do more of the supernatural, but like dealing with the idea of death coming for them. I kind of like that. That was something that was a little different. It does have archetypal sort of characters, the jock, the stoner, the dorky guy, the dorky girl, whatever, you know, it has those sort of archetypal characters, but it sort of plays with them and tweaks them and twists them, and I kind of like that. There is much fun to be had here. Really what you come to this film for is the kill scenes and the death scenes. And this is filled with some really great ones. The opening with the plane, the vision of the plane exploding is fantastic, and you can nearly feel the flames coming out after when that transpires. There's certain deaths that are really cool throughout the film, where Mrs. Luton sort of gets killed in a house, and there's an explosion and a knife and blood, and there's all these really great things in that scene I loved. Where Amanda's character gets killed, Terry, and just it's shocking, but it's also like it's a shocking scene, but it's also quite brilliantly done because you can't tell it's fake. Where there's a dummy and her digital where she gets hit, it's really well done. That sort of is a great, shocking and surprising moment in the film. And there's a little bit with other ones, but the other one that sort of stands out for me is at the end with Clear trapped in a car that's fire all around, electricity. That's a really great scene. I love that a lot as well. There's a couple of things that connect us to the film. One is once Alex sees the visions and continues to have small visions throughout the film, we're privy to that. We're let into that sort of aspect where nobody else is. None of the other characters see what he sees. Only we do, because we're part of it. They invite us in to be part of that journey. And I thought that was really cool. That's a way of drawing the audience in and becoming a participant rather than just an observer, is something I always talk about. But that's kind of what this film does. And you're on Alex's side from the beginning. Even when people doubt him or think he's responsible, you see what's really had transpired. And it kind of makes you invested in the character and part of that sort of part of the story in a lot of ways as well. And the other thing is the sort of heart and soul of the film is really the relationship between Alex and Clear, and just how they sort of connect, how they're sort of different, how Clear sort of sees Alex, and just their connection creates a really strong bond. And that's something you connect to. A relationship is really the connective tissue throughout the whole film. There was a bit of a different ending where ultimately Claire became pregnant and all that sort of stuff, but they reshot that and gave us that sort of Paris ending where the big sign comes swinging down and cuts to black just minutes before Kerr Smith's character gets hit. I thought this ending was really great. The film does ask questions. Why does Alex have these visions? They never really ask the questions why, or he doesn't sort of question it. It's just something that happens. And who is Tony Todd's character? Is he just there to give them information? Is he death himself? Or is he something more, trying to help the people survive what they've trapped in? But because he seems to know what's going on before they come and speak to him. So there's all these questions in regards to his character and things, and I'll go into a bit more about who he is and who I think he is, and that throughout the next sort of reviews. And I'll go through which films are my favourite. I have to start with the beginning. The first one's my favourite just because it begins the story and I like it and I connected to it. I saw it when it first came out, so there's a connection there. I saw the other couple when they first came out, but this was sort of the one I had the most connection with. It does really start to get you to question things and observe things in a different way, and that's the joy of the film, the connection and the fun with it that you have. And it's definitely one of the best sort of early noughties horror films in my opinion. So we're on to Final Destination 2. This came out not long after the first one. I think it was 2 or 3 years. And it sort of did a similar thing. It's sort of your similar sequel in that now we're focused on somebody else, Kim, played by AJ Cook. And it's really about how she has a vision on a highway just before and sees a huge car pile up. And this huge accident takes place. And her and her friends are killed and a variety of other people. And then she sort of realizes that, and she saves some people, but ultimately loses her friends. And she sort of starts to wonder what's going on. It's a good sequel in that it's a connection to what happened on Flight 180 and there's talk of that. And also the appearance, once again, of a reoccurring character, Ali Larter's character, Clear Rivers. And she's the connecting tissue from the first film. And she's the one that offers information to Kim, but also she goes to see Tony Todd's character and he talks about only new life will defeat death. So it's kind of like he's helping them in this one rather than just giving them information. He gives them an idea of what they could do. And it slowly you start to question who is Tony Todd's character and what importance does he have to the complete story and arc of the whole series. And this was also the first film that started to question things. Kim's questioning why she's having these visions. There's even a scene where she talks to her father and asks if her mother had these sort of visions, because obviously her mother has passed away or not in the picture at the point in time as the story takes place. Starts to question it. She's the first character to really do that. Like Alex just could have sort of accepted it, and then Clear does as well. But in this one, it's really about why is this happening? She questions that. And what makes this differ from the first film is, in the first film, it's really about Alex and trying to work out what's going on, and then he brings other people in, and he kind of looks like the bad guy because he keeps appearing at these people's homes trying to help them, but ultimately watches them die. Where this sort of takes a different approach. Yes, it starts out that way. Kim has these visions and it starts out just her, focused on her. But when Clear River's character comes in, or when she goes to see her and Clear becomes part of the story, this is when they start to form a bond together, Kim and Clear, and try and save the other people and try and work out what's going on. You know, Clear gives her particular information and helps her along the way. But it's all about them preparing. It's all about them moving forward and trying to save the survivors of this particular tragic highway crash. And so they start to pursue it. They start to go, well, watch out for signs, watch out for this, be careful of that, we've got to be safe, be all together. And obviously tragedy starts to befall the characters and they slowly start to die. It's the only real film where they're pursuing and trying to stop and save the people, from trying to stop what's going on and save the people. It's because of that, it makes you ask the question, if they didn't do what they're doing, would the outcome still be the same? So they're letting people know and shock and sight, because there's one particular death where Kim sees some sort of vision of like pigeons, and they go to save the kid at the dentist, and by saying pigeons, he runs into it and he gets killed. So it's sort of like, are the choices they're making helping or forcing something to unfold? There is still the death presence, and that's something I didn't mention in the first film. Death is a presence in the movie, not as a physical form, but more of a feeling, more of a gust of wind or a dark discoloration. But he's there. And this sort of has that aspect as well, but it's them pursuing it which sort of changes a little bit because of the choices they make. But it is still the same sort of thing, a character having visions and about them trying to get to the bottom of things. This has some really great death scenes in it as well, but they're more elaborate in a way, like the Mrs. Luton's death in the first film, where they take their time, where they sort of stretch out things of suspense and you don't know what's going to happen. There's one sequence where a guy, you know, he survived the crash, he won the lotto, and he's bought all this stuff, and he ultimately ends up in a house fire. And you think the fire's going to kill him, and it doesn't. And then he gets out, and the apartment explodes, and he gets downstairs, and the ladder won't work, and you know, and he pushes that down, and then he gets on the ground, thinks he's survived, then he slips over and gets impaled by the ladder as it just comes crashing down to the ground. So it sort of draws those sort of death scenes out a bit more. The kid being crushed by a giant bit of glass is kind of fun as well. One death I really love involves an elevator and a woman's head getting stuck in the doors. It's a fantastic sequence. It's gritty and dark and bloody, and then when you see the characters return, you know, they're drenched in blood, and it's kind of a really cool imagery. And it's also, even though Kerr Smith's character in the first film was doing it as taking control, this is the first time where a character tries to kill themselves in this sequence as well, to prove that I'm the one in control, and death hasn't got a design, it isn't trying to kill me, and I have a say in this. Puts a gun to his head and pulls the trigger many times, and it doesn't kill him. And this is the first sort of introduction to the idea that you can't die if it's not your time. And I thought that was an interesting little aspect to it. There's a car crash sequence is really good, and then a few people die in that. It's really well done and entertaining. And it's sort of example of where death's involved in that, where rather than them seeking it out, it's like he's helping it unfold, or whoever death is helping it unfold. The whole sequence at the hospital in the end, it's okay. Like, they only have to kill off particular characters, and you know, and characters you really like end up dying, and the way they sort of work out how to beat it it's fine. Like, it's something different anyway. And then it has that sort of ending that they had in the first film where they go to Paris, but this time it's a barbecue and a kid explodes. They do have sort of this love story relationship aspect between AJ Cook's character, Kim and Thomas, played by Michael Lands. And that's okay. Like, he's a cop trying to work out what's going on, and she's one having visions and they're working together. But it doesn't, like, it just sort of copies what they do in the first one. But like I mentioned, once again, Tony Todd's fantastic in his little role, and I really love seeing him in these films because I'm a huge Candyman fan, and I love what he did in that movie, and it's my favourite performance by him. But I love seeing him in other horror films because he's always really great. He's tall, he has that booming voice, and he can be menacing in the simplest of ways, and I love that. And overall, this is a pretty solid sequel. Like, it's shorter than the first. I like the aspects of it. And at least it was connecting in a way to the previous film. So with Final Destination 3, they really stepped out and tried to do something completely different. Well, not completely different, but different enough that it differed from the first two movies. So this was the first introduction to Mary Elizabeth Winstead in this film, and she's the thing that kept me intrigued in this movie, just her performance. She's always been a really great actress, and there's a believability no matter what she's in, and you really believe her in this film. She plays Wendy. I wish they had a better name, but she does play the Wendy character, and she's the one who sort of starts piecing it together. It's not so much, this one differs in it's not so much about visions the character have. There's a whole sequence that takes place at a theme park, and the ultimate crash happens on a roller coaster. And it's about Wendy taking these photos for the yearbook, because they're all in high school and she's taking photos. And then the tragedy happens. Yes, she has a vision, one single vision, that has to do with the crash itself. But she never really has any other visions. That's where it differs a little bit. And also, it's not about the visions that connected to what's going on or trying to help people. It's the photos she's taken. There's something about the images in the photo that represents something that's going to befall the characters that do survive. Now, the roller coaster sequence is pretty well done. It's a bit visual effect heavy, but it's kind of cool. The death scenes are interesting and fun, and I kind of like what they're doing with it here. And it's another really good opening to the film. And then you see the survivors, and they think she's crazy, but they're not as freaked out by what she saw as they were in the two previous films. And this one also went back to high school. The first film's in high school, the second one takes place in college, or takes place when the kids are adults, ultimately. The characters are adults. And this goes back to the teen stuff. And I like that. There's something about the teen stuff, about that idea of coming of age and questioning things, and only parents not believing the kids. And I kind of like that aspect to the movie. So she starts to look at the photos, and each photo represents different things, and she goes along trying to stop what's going on. But once again, we get that sort of death presence there, in the way that wind's blowing through trees or moving through, and there's just something about, she starts to have these feelings. Not just visions, but this feeling that there's something around her, something that doesn't feel quite right. And she starts to try and work that out. And this one has great deaths as well. Like I mentioned, the roller coaster scene at the start's really good. There's two girls who die in a tanning salon. That's really well done. The whole sequence is fun. The way they burn up, the music, the whole thing is really cleverly done. There's one where an engine flies out and hits this guy in the back of the head, which is really cleverly done. Music comes on at certain times, and it's like drawn out. The deaths are drawn out once again, which I really like. I like that they take their time with them. It isn't just a quick, sharp death. It's like it unfolds in a certain particular way, much like, death's plan or design, I suppose. And that's kind of what they're going for. The sequence at a hardware store, that's really well done, involving a nail gun and particular things. It's really clever how that unfolds as well. And there's a sequence towards the end where they're at this sort of festival, and they're all still just trying to work out what's going on. One of the characters is resentful of his girlfriend dying, and ultimately it targets Wendy, and he kind of seems like a villain in a way. And that's something they do have throughout the first three films anyway, where Kerr Smith in the first one, it's not a villain per se, but he's sort of the antagonist of the film. You have another one in the second movie, and in this one you had another character as well who's like that, who thinks by killing Wendy he'll set everything right and it'll skip him. So it's kind of like they need that sort of conflict within these particular movies, I guess. But this sequence is really well done, and it's sort of like how they're sort of piecing it together. And like I said, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is fantastic in it, and a really great performance. And I really love the ending of the film. It has that sort of, each one has a fun sort of ending. The first one is the sign swinging down in Paris. The second one's the barbecue and the explosion. And this one's on a train. And I really love the concept on the train. And I wish they kind of did a Final Destination set on a train. I really wish that was the fourth film, rather than what we got with the fourth film. I'll get into that in a moment. But I just kind of like the train aspect where she has visions, everybody's on the train and it sort of crashes and then she wakes up and it just ends like that. And I love that. It's really gory and violent. It's really fun sort of final scene in the movie. This is a film, when I first saw it, I liked it. In recent years, I haven't been a fan of it because I just felt it was a bit silly and a bit dumb and the photos were silly, I thought, to begin with. And being an early noughties sort of film, like 2003 or 4 or 5, whatever it is, it kind of has that sort of feel of those particular horror movies that all felt the same. But upon this viewing, it's really grown on me. And it isn't just because of Mary Elizabeth Winstead's performance. It's just a really interesting sequel, I think. And I think it's a sort of a great ending to a sort of trilogy. They don't completely follow an edge from each other. The second one a little more than the third, but they all connect back to Flight 180 and what transpired on that. And it all sort of flows into this sort of really great way of watching it as a trilogy. Different focuses, different characters, but it is sort of similar in the way that they execute it and they sort of feel similar. There's just something about it this time that I really loved, and it's one I definitely want to return to and watch more and more and draw more out of. But it's definitely, the first 3 to me are the best in the series. I really love what they do with each of them, how they're sort of slightly different, how they pursue this idea of visions and working out who's next and Death's plan and all that sort of stuff is really great. The only thing this one doesn't have is Tony Todd. Yes, it has his voice voicing some sort of demon like statue out the front of the roller coaster, but he's not in it, and I really wish he was, because I felt he's part of that world and he just wasn't, which is a little disappointing. But overall it's a sort of fun and entertaining movie. Like I said, the first 3 are really good sort of trilogy. Final Destination 4 I don't care for. I don't really enjoy it. I feel the speedway crash I didn't really care for. Some of the deaths were okay, but they went really digital and looked too fake, where the previous films were trying to at least have practicality with the digital effects enhancing that, where this one just went kind of all digital. I think it's poorly written, it's got bad characters, it's uninventive deaths. The only sequence I really love in it, I think is great, is the cinema sequence where they're watching a 3D movie and there's a fire behind the screen and all that sort of stuff. That sequence is really, really great. Even though it sort of cheats a little bit because it's from perspective of the character who's not having particular visions, being the one seeing what's going to transpire. It sort of loses a little bit. But this sequence is just great. It's fun, it's entertaining, there's great explosions, it's just a really great and horrific sort of sequence. Even the way the character has visions is kind of boring. It's like he's seeing symbols and trying to piece them together. It's just crap. I actually didn't rewatch it. It's the only one I didn't rewatch before doing this video, because I just felt I didn't like it. I watched one of those reaction videos and I got enough to remember what that film was about. It just dropped the ball. I know it was going for a more gimmicky thing with the 3D aspect, and some of that 3D stuff is okay, but it's just not a series that works really well with that gimmick, and that sort of takes away from it. And being poorly written with characters that you don't really care about or what happens to them, it seems just crappy. There is that sort of character once again that tries to kill themselves and they can't because it's not their time to die, and I kind of like that aspect, and it didn't have Tony Todd in it either. It just felt like after the third one they sort of gave up, and I thought, oh well, we'll make another one and we'll put a 3D gimmick aspect into it, and then people love it, and they didn't, and it was a really crappy version. And I really, really suffer through this film, and I would never rewatch it. I just don't like it, don't care for it. Now, when they came out with Final Destination 5, this was really great. I just felt this was a return to form, and spoilers ahead, this was kind of a prequel. It sort of connected to the first one in a really great way, and I liked that. And Tony Todd's in it much more, which I really loved. He appears at a lot of the deaths, and even a character comes up to him and says, "Who are you? Why are you always here? What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm doing my job," because he's a coroner. Or is he death? Or is he something else trying to help them? You're never quite sure. And his answers to questions in this film were very different from the previous, where he tells them, in a way, the only way to survive is taking someone else's life. So it makes you question, is he deaf? Is he forcing these people to make these decisions and kill themselves, or so he can get more lives? Or is he actually trying to help them in some form? And that's the questions I have. I have a theory, and I'll go into that a bit more about his character in a moment. This one was kind of similar, had more interesting characters and was a bridge collapse. And there are these people on the bus and the visions he has. And I kind of like what they do with here. Like in the third one, he doesn't really have more than one vision. He just sort of starts to see this one thing on the bus, and then it's about all the survivors trying to work out what's going on. And he looks like he was involved to begin with, and then he's ultimately not. And it's kind of like how it's tying back into what they did in the first film, which I thought was really good. It was a good bookend to the whole series in a lot of ways. And kind of is part of that trilogy in a way, in the smallest of ways, especially towards the end of the movie. Unlike the previous film, it had interesting characters. I liked the storylines. The deaths were pretty cool. Guy gets hooked in the head. There's a sort of a gymnastics accident that happens is really great as well. And it's sort of about a character going, okay, I'm going to start killing people to survive, till it skips me. And that's sort of an interesting element as well. There are some really cool sequences in it as well, and the death scenes are interesting. Not as good as the previous films, but still solid. There's one sequence where a character's going to get laser surgery on her eye, so she doesn't have to wear glasses anymore. And she's sort of scared of it, and what unfolds where the laser short circuits and starts burning her eye and her hand, and you think that's what's going to kill her, and she ultimately trips over something and falls out the window and her eye pops out of her head, which rolls, which is a really cool sequence. But it's sort of more elaborate, but what they do is the characters aren't always consistent through the film. The main couple are, but her character doesn't make sense. She's this tough, confident, strong woman, but when she comes to get eye surgery, she turns into this little child and is scared. And it just doesn't work for her character, even though the sequence is quite fun, and I do like that particular death sequence. And even at the start of the film, there's a credit sequence where we see all aspects of the previous film breaking through glass of things that have killed people and sequences. And I kind of thought that was great. It was kind of like saying, this is the end. This is the final one. We're not going to do any more. And we're going to bookend it. And it's going to connect all the way back to the beginning. And it does that. And all purposes, this is definitely redeemed itself from the previous movie. Is it one of my favourites in the film? No, it comes in behind number 3. For me, it's 1, 2 and 3 are my favourites, 1 being my favourite, and then 2 and 3, and then 5 after that, and 4 right at the bottom, right at the end. But it is still an entertaining Final Destination movie. They do try to do something different, and they do try to ask other questions. But no one really just asks that question of why am I having these visions, except for Kim in the second film. So it makes you start to wonder, how are they having these visions? Is there a higher power? Is there an angel? Is there someone there giving them the visions or giving them the opportunity to survive? Or is it all part of Death's plan that ultimately they're all going to die no matter what you do? And he gives them false hope that they can beat it. Or is it really trying to help them? And it's hard to decipher, and it's something they never really discussed or lent into. And I kind of hope the new film, Final Destination Bloodlines, really examines that, because I like the concept in the next film, where it's a family that have experienced this, and it continues on from when their grandmother's young, and then how it unfolds and how it's passed on from generation to generation. I hope by them doing that it answers these questions that I have about why these particular people are having these visions that have never had them before. So, as I mentioned earlier, in regards to Tony Todd, I have 2 ideas or 2 theories about who his character is in the film. The first one, like I said before, he's deaf. And he's telling these people, you can't beat death, you can't cheat death. I'm coming for you no matter what you do. But I'll give you a sense of false hope. I'll tell you these things that you might be able to do so you think you can survive. But ultimately you can't. And I'm here to trick you into believing you can. And he's the sort of letting things unfold the way they are. Like I mentioned, he's the fifth film's where he's in the most, and he starts to talk about things a bit more in that one, and I kind of love that aspect to the movie. And it started to get me to question his character. And a good theory is he is Death, and he is making sure things unfold the way they should, even if he is messing with people's lives. Or my other theory is he's there to help. He's an angel, he's a guardian of some sort, and he's there to guide these people through and stop Death from killing them. So there's two interesting theories. I'm not sure which one suits the most. I think they're both valid. But put down in the comments below which one you think is more feasible, or more the idea of what you think, or maybe you've never thought of this particular aspect, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So that sort of sums up those 5 movies. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Bloodlines. Like I did talk a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about Bloodlines a bit more. Like I mentioned, it's generational sort of Death's design, but it makes you wonder if, so maybe they're going to go into that idea of new birth defeats death. And I'm not sure how they're going to sort of tie it all together. And is it going to be just this family, or is this going to be the beginning of it all, where it all began, where it started, where people started having visions for whatever reason, and it went through a generational family, but did that start to affect everybody else around it? And are all the other films connected, or are all the other characters in the previous film connected in some way? These are the questions I have, and I want to see what they do with it. What I also like about this new iteration, or this new continuation of this series, is it's something refreshing and new, something we haven't seen before. Yes, it still has the death scenes and the premonitions and all that sort of stuff, and the idea of Death's design, but it feels refreshing because it feels like it's going back to something else. It isn't just a straight sequel. It's trying to do something different within it. And I think that is what may define this film over the others. And it could ultimately be my favourite. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. The response and reviews have been quite positive for this film when it's first been reviewed. So I have high hopes for it. It's actually one of the films I'm excited to see this year. And I hope it is a really great continuation of the Final Destination movies, and does, like I hope it does, something completely different. But anyway, that's it. That's my review of the 5 films and a little talk of the new one. And I really do hope the next film is really good, because I'm looking forward to it. So if you guys have seen the movie before this comes out, or once this comes out, the new one, yeah, let me know. Let me know what you thought of it, because I'm very interested and intrigued to see what other people think of it once I've seen it. Anyway, that's it. That's my video for today. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the ideas and talk about these particular films with the new one coming out, and I hope the new one is good. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.